So I was hoping that you could just start with taking us through your journey into medicine and your practice today.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to. And first of all, Ryan, grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. I admire the work you're doing, and so this is exciting. But just a little bit about me. So I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I've been practicing since 2012, and I'm actually out of Utah, but I work with clients all over the country. And as far as the journey, originally I was planning on going to medical school. In fact, in undergraduate school, I volunteered in the ER for several months, and then I shadowed a lot of different medical doctors. And I thought for sure that was the path I was going to take. But as I stepped into that space a little bit more, I realized that it just didn't feel like it was the right fit for me. And it's nothing against the profession because I have family and close friends that are involved there. But I felt like I needed something different. And so fast forward, I was actually, trying to determine what path I was going to take. And that's where I basically stumbled across chiropractic. And as I learned more about it, I was like, wow, okay, where's this been my whole life? Because I never went to one growing up. But then as I learned about it, I was like, man, this just makes sense. With the whole philosophy of chiropractic, really is understanding how we can help support the body to heal itself. And the phrase that chiropractors use a lot is the innate intelligence that's within each of us. And that really resonated with me, recognizing the power of our body and how it's capable of doing incredible things. I mean, we witness it with anyone that's had a child, right? You consider a sperm and an egg that come together, give it 9 months, and you have this beautiful baby that's came from a cellular kind of beginning. And how it all comes together to work out the way it does. It's just like fascinating to see how the body just knows what to do. And so, uh, one of the things I like to say is that I'm, in a sense, working with a body. It's like working with a cheat code because, you know, our bodies are designed to do amazing things. And so the way that it's created to be able to just operate effortlessly for the most part. Of course, we see a lot of illness and disease and dysfunction and other things that are problematic. But when things are aligned properly and things are working the way they're meant to, it's like the body can do really cool things. So it's one of the things that I've loved the most about this profession is knowing that with some of the ways we can influence the body, it's going to heal itself, or at least take those steps closer to healing. It's kind of like I'll jokingly say, like, how do we know um, what the body needs at certain times? And it's like I don't know. So like you and I, we might eat a meal and to consider the fact that the body's like, okay, today, the spleen needs a little bit more of these nutrients, or tomorrow it's like, okay, the liver's feeling a little left out. And I don't know how it works, obviously, but it's just fascinating when you think of, I just chew and swallow, and the body's like, hey, I got you. I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to deliver what needs to be delivered to where it needs to go. And it's just this constant balance that's happening. And anyways, that's one of the fascinating things that I love, is because I can give the body specific things, whether it's using like tools like nutrition or supplements, or even just hands-on treatments, different things that can influence the brain or the nervous system. And then I can just step back and watch things unfold. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So I've been practicing in Utah for years, and over the course of my career, I've always had an interest in serving children on the autism spectrum. And for a long time, honestly, I just focus mostly on musculoskeletal things and helping people with like back pain and sports injuries and headaches and car accident type cases. But as I went through this journey and I felt this tug to help families with kids on the spectrum, I started opening my mind more to other things that were out there as far as other services and other ways to help these individuals, which of course, in fact, has helped me serve a lot of other families and individuals too that aren't on the spectrum. And so the world I've dove into, a lot of different techniques that I use that are focused on neurological balancing. Um, I've learned techniques that are focused more on, gut health, detoxification of heavy metals, toxins, environmental toxins and infections that are hidden, parasites, things of that nature. And it's fascinating to see when you remove things that don't belong, how the body, it's like as if it's taking this big sigh of relief and saying, wow, thank you. I've been trying to operate as close to normal as I can. I'm doing the best I can. I promise I'm doing the best I can. But with that burden on me, it's really hard sometimes. And so taking, a step into removing things can sometimes be more important than just like making sure we're getting enough good stuff in the body. Because sometimes we focus there, where it's like, okay, I need my vitamins, I need my minerals, I need my nutrients, I need to make sure I'm feeding myself with all these good things and getting good water. And that is absolutely critical. But it's amazing, like when you start to pull things out that don't belong, it's like then the body's like, whoa, I can utilize all this other stuff way more efficiently. And it's like, at a fraction of the energy, so it's pretty cool when you see that. But I have two stepsisters that have sons that are on the autism spectrum, and I've witnessed their just the journey they've been on, and how different it is for each of them, because their boys are on different levels of the spectrum, and where one of them is, very, I would say, lacks independence quite a bit. He is nonverbal, definitely struggles with regulating emotions and all sorts of things. The other one, he is able to work, he's able to communicate, but definitely struggles socially with a lot of things. So witnessing that, and then all the other families that I've interacted with, it's just really inspired me to want to do more for these families. And so that's kind of where I am today, where a big journey that I'm on is, how can I empower parents on the autism journey? How can I help them find confidence, peace of mind, and of course, freedom and hope? Because I know when we serve a child that's on the spectrum, we're serving the whole family, right? So, if I'm doing something that's benefiting that child, then it can take a burden off of mom and dad and the siblings and whoever else is interacting. Because as you and I know, it's not an easy path for a lot of these families. So it's been a real fun, interesting, motivating journey, and I'm excited to share. So yeah, that gives you a little background about me. And I guess if you want to know, I went to school in Portland, Oregon, and spent my years there. It's a university called University of Western States. That's where I did my chiropractic education. And then since then, just have added so many other additional trainings, and trying to understand more of how I can create more value for families. So,
Okay, excellent path, and thank you for sharing so much. And I like that you mentioned, like, because a lot of people, including myself, up until a few years ago, was thinking of that chiropractic is more for like the back pain, like you're going to go in there and get your spine cracked or like feel
yeah,
hard things. And maybe that's because like those body pains will modulate our attention, hijack our attention faster than anything. So maybe people can see that quick relief there. But chiropractic, I've learned, is so much more than that.
hmm
Can you think, or can you, and I'll even admit, like whenever I think about, I like neurulation, and then we have those neuroepithelial cells, and like once I get to the spine part, like I'm done. I don't navigate that. But
sure.
the spine seems to be like this huge connector, or the connector of brain and body. Can
hmm
you just clear the air and help other people understand, like, oh, chiropractic is a good thing for autism. Like there's something there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. I appreciate that question too. And I think one thing that's fascinating to think about is the way that our body was created, and the innate wisdom that the body has as far as like how it's protecting itself. If you think about, probably, in my opinion, the most vital organ in the body is the brain and the nervous system. And those are the two organs, I'll say they're basically one, but the brain and the spinal cord, that are fully encased in bone. Every other organ and gland, you have some holes in your hearts or in your ribs. There's muscle there, of course, but of course the heart's critical. The colon's critical, the liver's critical, all of it's critical. But it is fascinating to think of that. But if you think about the brain and the spine, and how what the way it works is, so that spinal cord, you have like these finger-like nerves that come out of each level of your spine. And those nerves will go and communicate and send strength and energy to your muscles, to your organs and glands, and to every cell in the body. Now, there is a feedback loop that does go back up to the brain. So it's like this constant, I guess you could say, circle of information. So brain to body, body to brain. And when there's different things, like, for example, using chiropractic with the spine, if you have some of those vertebrae that are out of alignment, that can cause an additional stress or strain on those nerves exiting the spinal cord. And that means wherever that nerve is going to, it could potentially be that signal could be dampened or diminished a little bit, to where it's not as strong or as powerful as you would hope it to be. And so one of the fascinating things that I've witnessed in this world is there's some really cool ways you can measure function, for example, with using spinal adjustments, as well as what I call palpation, which just is a fancy word for contacting points on the body to feel for muscle tension. And I can witness within like a period of time an actual change, depending on where that nerve is coming out of the spine and what it's communicating with. And so if I create an adjustment, well, let's just say this. Let's use, for example, the stomach. Okay. So there's a spot right under your sternum, um, right there, that can get really tense and tight if your stomach is unhappy. And that can be connected to acid reflux. It could be connected to some hidden infections. It could be connected to toxins, or it could be connected to bad food. Maybe, you ate something that was a little sour or whatever. And if you touch right under your sternum, and if it's sensitive there, and if the muscle's really tight, that could indicate that the stomach's unhappy. Now, if you go to the spine and you look at vertebrae's numbers about T4 to T6 or T3 to T6, T7 area, and if you provide an adjustment there, and well, first of all, if you feel there's some tension there and the vertebrae aren't moving as well as it should, then you can provide an adjustment that then can release some tension there. And that allows not just the muscles to relax and the back to feel better, but it can also allow that nerve communication to flow more freely. And then if I go back to that stomach point after that adjustment and I feel that the muscle has relaxed there too, then what's neat is we can see that there was a connection between the spine and the stomach being unhappy, rather than maybe there was no issue with the food or a toxin. So it's like, it's a feedback that I can observe and look at, to where I can check those things and then go and recheck this thing underneath the sternum. And it's pretty fascinating. Now, if I go back to that sternum after I adjust the spine and I feel it's still tense and it's still uncomfortable for that patient, then that tells me the spine didn't have involvement in this case, but that it is probably something else. So it's a unique way where I can have an opportunity to really kind of evaluate what's maybe the underlying issue here and where I can go. I'll give you another example. I had a patient who would share that she would sometimes come in with this really sore back. And it usually was connected with after she ate a meal that just didn't sit well. And then sure enough, it would create what we call a visceral somatic reflex. So a visceral meaning organ or gland, and somatic meaning muscle, tissue, bone. Okay. And so you can have the opposite, which is a somatovisceral reflex. where if the muscle or tissue or the bones are off, that can cause an organ or gland to be stressed. But in this case, she had a visceral somatic reflex where her stomach was upset because of food. And as a result, she started feeling pain in her back. Anyways, we were able to do some things that helped her stomach that then actually helped alleviate some back pain too. And so it's pretty fascinating how it can go both ways. Um, a simple way of maybe just to kind of help this drive in this message, because it is a pretty fascinating way of how our body works. I mean, imagine this. So where I live, there's a main highway that runs north and south in Utah that goes through Salt Lake City. And then, of course, you have some offshoot highways that go to the east and to the west. And let's just say, for example, as you're going down this highway, you notice that there's a traffic jam and it's impeding traffic all the way back, several miles. Let's say it's even past where you go east and west, but that traffic jam, as it starts to influence, it starts to come back. And now you're also blocking those pathways to go east and west. And it's kind of like similar to what I'm describing here. So we might have a pathway from our brain to our body that's maybe going directly to that stomach. But let's say there's a traffic jam there because of some underlying stress like chemicals or toxins or bad food or hidden infections or whatever. Then that's creating like a feedback to where now it's also influencing that nerve that's coming down that spinal cord. And as it exits the spinal cord, there's one path that goes to the left, to the stomach, and then another path that goes to the right, to the muscles and to the spine. And so now it's like everything over here that's just kind of all, gummed up and congested from traffic jam, that's also now influencing the muscles over here that go down this other path. Hopefully that makes sense. But it is fascinating. And then of course, as we adjust these areas of the body and, the cervical spine and the thoracic spine. So cervical, of course, being the neck, thoracic's the middle of the back, and the lumbar is the lower back. But there's some powerful things that can happen from an adjustment that can really unlock some things, both mentally and emotionally, as well as physically. So, did I do an okay job explaining that, Ryan?
Yeah, I love the road analogy because
Yeah.
it's a perfect analogy. Um, it sounds like what the chiropractor can do is get closer to the problem if it's body, because the brain will register it,
Hmm.
but from there, what happens? Like the brain is the one that's like receiving the signal and making sense of the pain, where the pain's happening. But you can get down there and get closer to the problem
You bet.
and reveal the true root cause. And I like that about medicine is finding root cause
You bet.
problems and not just like the symptom um, treatment.
You bet. Yeah.
Are those ganglion cells that you were talking about that's communicating there or no?
Yeah, you definitely do have some of those ganglion cells. So you got the nerve, you've got those nerves as they're exiting the spine. And, we call those, of course, peripheral nerves as they're exiting the spine. And there is some ganglion, and then there is this feedback that's constantly going on. So you got what we call motor and sensory. So motor nerves are ones that go from the brain to the body, and sensory nerves are ones that go from the body to the brain. And so it's kind of like that motor and sensory nerves working together in tandem. A very good example would be me like opening and closing my hand right now. This is me telling my motor nerves to work. But let's say if I if I touch a hot stove, the sensory sends that signal so fast that then the motor throws down another signal really quick to say pull back. It's kind of a fascinating thing where you see that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, those things that we don't have to necessarily think about so much.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like your field. Um, some psychology, which is what like autism and psychiatry kind of falls under.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just like it's those things that we don't have to think about. Um, is that yeah? So maybe we can talk about those motor and sensory neurons as it relates to autism, because those are definitely involved,
You bet.
especially with the brain and body connection and things like apraxia. I don't know if you have any um, experience with apraxia, and then I'm thinking also like those somatosensory and motor cortex too. If you have any information about how the spine and body is interacting with those two areas right there. Do you have experience with working with people that have autism regarding like those that motor and sensory problems? And is it the somatosensory area, motor cortex area that is the ultimate receiver of the sensory neurons that you're talking about, and then facilitating those motor
Yeah.
neurons?
So there's a doctor that I've trained under. His name is Dr. Alan Phillips. He's from New Zealand, and he's a DO, so a doctor of osteopathy. Through his research and his clinical applications and study and determinations, he's been able to create a system that's been pretty fascinating. It's called the Neurological Integration System, or his company, I think, is called Neuralink. But his work has probably been one of the most fascinating things where we've used basically kind of what you're talking about. And it's a way to test different points on the body to see if there's a signal default or not. And so there's a lot of muscle testing that I use where we use the stimulus from a muscle spindle cell. For example, if I have a patient, and if some of these kids can't do this on their own, so I can actually test using their parent, and I can use their arm. It's like I can have the parent hold their arm out, and then while I'm testing their arm, I'll test and have them hold it, and they'll hold strong, and that's my baseline. But then as I touch certain points on the child's body, because if we're right there in the same space together, we can actually do this. It's pretty fascinating. But I can test the parent, and as I touch the child, let's just say I touch, the prefrontal, I'll touch the premotor cortex. This spot here has some unique connections neurologically with the hippocampus, the amygdala, the visual cortex, auditory cortex, all those things. And there's ways we can test different an opportunity to test to see if some of those things are connecting or engaging or functioning. And then there's these unique little ways of how we can contact points on the body to where it's like sending information to the nervous system to hit a reset button. And so we do function with that often, and we find that there's some really neat things that can initiate change with even just some of these gentle little touch and corrections. So it's pretty powerful. Dr. Phillips, his work is really fascinating, and that's one of the ways that we really can tap into that sensory motor complex, because we can use this both for example, different aspects with. Um, I'll give you a simple example of how well the right brain and the left brain are communicating together. And you've got that spot right in the middle there that is a bridge, and where if there's something that's just not connecting or flowing as well, there's unique ways we can test that just using some muscle testing and me contacting different points on the body, and then we can create a correction, and it can be instantaneous to see the correction being made. But then, of course, the body will then process that, and it will, over the next. Sometimes it can be really, really fast, where you see it just kind of things click on, and then sometimes it's like, okay, the body needs to work through those changes, and within 24, 48 hours, you'll even start to see some improvements. One of the big signs that I see when I know things are working internally with the nervous system is that when I'm done working with a patient, they feel exhausted and they just want to go home and take a nap. And you start to see their eyes start to gloss over. But with these little corrections and these little contact points, as we're touching, testing, and then there's unique ways to do a little reset. then you start to see things kind of shift. And it's really fascinating because it gives me a chance to test, apply and then retest and then be able to see some cool changes that happen. And so if you wanted to experience this for yourself, you would probably want to go to Neuralink Global, and there's different NIS practitioners throughout the United States, and actually there's several in Australia, New Zealand, Europe as well, that do this type of work. So um, I'm one of many that uses that technique, and it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, so your practice has that?
Yeah,
You
we
guys,
we do that here.
okay. Is Dr. Phillips the one that kind of introduced you to that, or
So
was
he's the grandfather of the technique. He's the one that basically developed it. And then there's another doctor that's here in the States. He's from Seattle area, named Dr. Jim Bentz. He would be a great person to interview to give you more details about NIS if you wanted to learn more about that. But he's the one that he's the main contact for the United States that is someone that I learned under him. And then I've gone to seminars internationally, like up in Canada, where I met Dr. Phillips there, and we did some training. And so I have worked closely with him just through those seminars and different conferences that I've been to.
okay? Because the reason I asked is because just like our conversation earlier, or the question earlier about people not understanding how chiropractic practices can help these types of conditions, and people might think that it's like pseudo, or they're just being sold procedures. But
Yeah.
whenever I learned about it, I knew somebody personally that took their child to Louisville for this type of thing, and it's like, oh, what is this? But
Hmm.
uh, that I mentioned earlier, like once it gets below the brainstem, I'm just like, I don't necessarily do that as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about just to say that a parent is calling you wanting to set up an evaluation or so forth for their child with autism. Can you just take us through that process?
Sure. Yeah. So Um, I still work face to face with a lot of those families, where I do the hands-on work, similar to kind of what I've explaining. So if someone were to come in, we would basically the evaluation would be, I'd be looking at their spine, I'd be feeling their vertebrae, I'd be feeling to see how well things are moving. I pay special attention, especially to the upper cervical part. So right where that brainstem and spinal cord come together. If there's a lot of dysfunction or you know uh, any kind of restriction there, that can definitely have some strong influence on the nervous system. And then through there we evaluate the function of the spine. But then I get into checking some of those points that I was talking about as far as palpation, so feeling for points of where I feel what we call an involuntary muscle contraction. Those are some spots that I would look at, because that can give me an indication if there's organs or glands that could be under stress, because again, that's that visceral somatic reflex that we're looking at. And then I take note of that. And then I have some unique ways where we can do some more muscle testing, or kinesiology is maybe a word some people are familiar with, and where I'll actually test and I'll touch different points of the body. For example, if I touch right on the back of the head, then I'm testing to see if the cerebellum is under stress. Or if I touch right here in between, my eyebrows, then I'm testing for that has a unique reflex point with the pineal gland. Or if I touch, of course, right here in the throat and I muscle test and the arm drops, that can be indicating that the thyroid gland might be under stress. So I go through and I do an organ gland scan, and I determine and I make note of all the organs or glands that seem to be having a signal default. And then from there, we then try to figure out, okay, what's the priority? And there's unique ways where we can determine what the priority organ or gland is. And then we determine through using different frequencies. I use a lot of physics in my office. We use chemistry with like blood work and urine and stuff like that. But I like to use physics because it's fast, easy, and it's still really effective. And so I have different frequencies where we can go and maybe test over the liver, and we can see, okay, what's causing stress there. And I have frequencies of things like heavy metals, or I have a frequency of parasites. And so if the arm that I'm testing drops when I'm holding that against the body, then that's the body way of giving me indication that this is causing stress here. If the arm stays strong when I'm testing over there with whatever it is I'm holding in my hand that has that frequency, and there are these little vials that have the frequency, just to kind of give you an idea. Then if the arm stays strong, then that's the body giving me feedback saying, hey, this isn't a problem. We don't need to worry about this. But we can do that with testing all sorts of frequencies, from parasites to heavy metal toxins to chemicals to fungus to mold to candida and yeast to Lyme's disease like Borrelia, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Mycoplasma, Bartonella. Those are all part of the Lyme's disease family. Rickettsia would be part of that too. Those are underlying hidden infections. We can also test the frequency of bacteria and viruses, as well as like radiation, radon gas, really lots of different things. Even checking for foods, like maybe someone is really reactive to dairy or to gluten, or maybe it's none of those and it's more eggs. And so there's ways we can even hold the frequency of those foods and hold it against the body and do some testing. And so we're just gathering a lot of information, trying to understand what is the body's priority, trying to figure out what's creating the most stress on the system at this time. And then from there we go forward, and then we create a plan to help with that individual. So that gives you an idea. And then some other techniques we'll use are, so I talked about NIS. Another one that a doctor from Florida, he developed, his name's Dr. Michael Chance, and it's called the hypothalamus reset technique. And the hypothalamus is a critical part of the brain that's, I would say, it's the control tower for so many things, with like temperature control, appetite, hormone function. It does help regulate the nervous system with different things. And so it's also part of that limbic center of the brain with the emotions and things of that nature, and stress and trauma. So there's a unique technique called the hypothalamus reset technique that we use. And then a big thing that I'm doing virtually for my patients is really mostly focusing on cellular healing. And so that's where we determine and try to understand, I've created a plan that's been working fantastically with so many families. It's designed to help heal at the cell level, reduce cellular inflammation. And then, of course, since our body is made up of trillions of cells, if we can help improve the cellular health, then that naturally ripples into so many other things. And so with that program, we use a lot of focus on preparing the body by supporting the downstream detox pathways and the drainage funnel, which would include your liver, your kidney, your colon, your lymphatic system. We make sure those areas are working properly, because again, what's causing cellular inflammation and inflammation at the brain and the nervous system oftentimes can be some of those things we've talked about, such as, heavy metal toxicity, chemical toxicity, environmental toxins, parasites, mold, fungus, hidden infections, things of that nature. Just to give you a quick example, I had a mother bring a child into my office. This has probably been a year and a half ago now. And this cute little baby was only a month old, and he was having seizures. And the parents went to their doctor. They didn't know why this child was having seizures, and they tried some different things, and it wasn't calming down the seizure response. So she was referred into our office by a family member that had come to us. And this mom brings in her baby boy, And as I'm going through and doing this exact same kind of testing that I'm describing with you, using the mom to do some muscle testing, using those frequencies to try to determine what's causing stress on this poor little baby's nervous system. And what's crazy, Ryan, is we discovered that it was microscopic parasites of all things. How does a newborn baby get parasites? I don't know. And it's not because the parents are not because they're unclean or they're, careless. There's nothing of that nature, but somehow this child had been exposed to it, and that was the stressor. And so I have some different herbs that we use in tinctures, so liquid, and she was able to put it in the bottle, and sure enough, within a matter of a week or so, those seizures calmed down and stopped. They went on vacation actually and left the supplements behind that were designed to help with the killing the parasites and helping flush it out of the body, and they forgot, and guess what, the seizures came back. And the reason why is because they hadn't done it long enough. And so as they went through that process, after a good, probably 2 months of using these products, the seizures didn't return. And now that little boy is walking around in 18 months or so. Well, yeah, he's probably about 18 months now, and doing great. But it was something like that you would never really think about. But killing that hidden infection helped relieve the cellular inflammation at the nerve that was affecting the nervous system.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And of course,
That,
that's his unique story. So I wouldn't say everyone that has a seizure it's probably
yeah,
parasites, but you never know until you start trying to look and to search for it.
yeah, that root cause finding again,
Yeah,
which is hard to do. If there's so many different ways of going about that, but it sounds like you were able to find it pretty fast.
yeah. Fortunately, just again, I've been really blessed to come across different doctors throughout my career where it's almost like I find them at the right time, and then they have connections with different techniques or different education or different ways of applying some of this. And so I guess you could say I've kind of created this potpourri of things where you come to my office, and you could, even though I have a lot of different techniques, I wouldn't say people are paying to receive a technique. They're just wanting to receive health. And so we use all the tools we have, and depending on that individual, we have tools that we know we can use to try to understand, okay, what's the underlying stressor, why is this happening, and then what tools can we use to help reset or allow the body to heal itself.
Yeah, I see a lot of different conditions, especially those so-called like psychiatric conditions that you treat on your website at True North Cairo, and it makes me think that like, these are mostly connected, or all of them are connected upstream.
Yeah,
But our paradigm kind of just tends to treat symptoms.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how all of those conditions, if you find like they're maybe kind of connected, and then maybe they just manifest differently?
Yeah, as far as which conditions specifically?
Well, I saw like the ADD, autism, schizophrenia was on there. Things like bipolar was on
Yeah,
there. If I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
it's like there was maybe 12 to 15 conditions there.
sure. Yeah, so there's a few different ways we go about that. So I kind of explained a little bit, but the unique connection between all of it is there's a few things. Um, so there typically is some kind of an underlying stressor that maybe hasn't been found. So it could be one of those hidden toxins or infections that we talked about. But then there could also be old trauma. So it could be both physical trauma and emotional trauma that can create, I guess you could call it like a PTSD. And of course, when I first thought of PTSD a long time ago, I thought, oh, that's only connected to people that have gone to war and witnessed, awful things, and they come back and whatever. But man, you can have PTSD from all sorts of things. and you might not even know it. And so I've seen how there's unique connections though with emotional stress and trauma that can definitely also influence the nervous system. And then when that nervous system has been influenced in a negative way, that can also create, I guess you could say, imbalanced patterns with brain waves, and then that can also snowball into other issues. For example, usually for a lot of people, this isn't the case for everyone, but a lot of times anxiety that's been going on long enough can eventually turn into depression, right? Or some of these other things can be an underlying stress or trigger. Now, again, you got to remember that, again, the way our body was created is designed to be self-healing, self-regulating, and it's capable of doing that. But if it's not doing that, that's when you have to start to put on your investigative hat and just say, instead of just trying to treat the symptom to calm down the symptom, ask the question why, right? Or what is the body trying to tell me? And so those are the things that really we look at. We do have a treatment in our office called Neurofeedback, and that's one of those unique things where you actually, to determine, it's a way to determine if the brain waves are imbalanced. And so we use like a shower cap. It looks like a shower cap. It's got all these little sensors in it. And then we'll put gel into the sensors to where it's touching the scalp to the sensor. So the liquid gel kind of gives us that connection to the brain waves. And then we have a software that allows us to be able to interpret which brain waves are working too fast or too slow, or if they're imbalanced, or if they're right-sided imbalance, left-sided imbalance, all that stuff. So we're looking at, delta, theta, beta, high beta, and alpha, and that has an opportunity to see what's going on there. So this is one of those ways where we can help create a shift in training the brain. It's kind of like hiring a personal trainer for your brain instead of going to the gym to hire a personal trainer for your getting big muscles. The neurofeedback is, in a sense, that's what it is. And so that's been a tool that's been really fascinating. And so we do see with some of those brain waves and which ones and which part of the brain where it might be too fast or too slow, that could be connected to, depression, anxiety, insomnia, ADD, ADHD, PTSD, OCD, chronic headaches or migraines can also have some connection here, as well as post concussion syndrome. So those things can all be measured with this brain mapping with neurofeedback. And so that's been fascinating. But again, knowing that the underlying cellular inflammation, I would say, is probably the common connecting point too. If we can help calm that down, then we start to see again where it's me stepping back and saying, okay, body, you know what to do from here. You got it. Um, and so, like, I'll give you an example of one of our patients that has dealt with bipolar depression. He was diagnosed with it. He's in his 40s. He's lived with this for decades. And, we suggested neurofeedback. He declined that option. So then I said, okay, well, let's focus on the cellular healing part and let's see what happens. And sure enough, as we go through our evaluation and determination of what could be underlying stressor on him, we determined that there was definitely some toxicity and some hidden infections. And as we started addressing that, things didn't shift right away. This one took some time because, again, this man, he'd been dealing with this for decades, from the time he was like 12 to 15 years old, and now he's 45. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a quick fix, but it probably took 2 or 3 months to where things started just making that shift. It was probably about 2 months, but we were giving him different products that helped with cellular healing, reducing inflammation, supporting the brain and the nervous system, and then detoxification as well. And as we've made that shift, it's like been amazing. It's been life-changing for this individual. He's more confident. He's capable of functioning, you know, on a daily basis, where before, you know, he had suicidal thoughts, he had challenges with focus, he had challenges with energy, he had challenges with motivation. And so that was his story. We have another patient that came in with depression, and the neurofeedback was the thing that he needed the most, you know. So it's really cool because we got a lot of different ways where we can help people and where we can support individuals with their needs. But again, our goal is we're not treating the condition or the symptom, but we're treating the person and trying to understand what's going to be the best fit for them and what they're willing to do too. Because you know, we're not going to force anyone or say, oh, if you don't do this, then you know, there's no hope. It's just like, okay, let's meet you where you're at, and then we'll go from there. And so I mean, healing and working with the body, it's kind of like a garden, you know. You have to make sure you're prepping the soil. You've got to make sure that the weeds are removed. Then those plants can flourish and they can thrive and they can produce fruit. But if you never take care of the weeds, and if you never give the soil the fertilizer and all the good things that it needs, it's hard for those plants to really flourish. And so that's really probably a good analogy of, and a part of our philosophy, is we want to take care of the soil. We want to make sure that it gives that body and brain a chance to thrive. And I would say that's probably the biggest connecting piece with all those different conditions. And then, of course, there's fine tuning and tweaking and other things like that. So,
Yeah, that's good for him, especially, you know, bipolar. People, especially if they're in a manic episode, you know, they don't want to seek treatment.
for sure.
So that's very fascinating stuff. The brainwaves are underrated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a lot with the brainwaves for
Mm-hmm.
sure, and especially with autism,
Mm-hmm.
the inability to get into theta and then high gamma. Do you have experience with checking the brainwaves in autism? And do you have like if you do, is there some like common things that you're seeing?
You know, unfortunately, we haven't done as much with autism and the brainwave kind of assessment. We have had some. It does seem like, though, that alpha is really high, the alpha waves, and then theta seems to be really really off as well. Um, and and so I don't have enough good data to really share, but the ones that we have done, those are some of the things that I recall, when we've done the brain mapping there. The other challenge too with sometimes, doing a brain map for a kid on the spectrum is the result might not always be super accurate. And the reason why, for you and me, if we do a brain map, um, if we can sit still for, you know, 6 minutes more or less, and we can do that. But for a kid that's like, you know, even if they're neurotypical, um, it's still hard to sit still for like 5 to 6 minutes, you know. So sometimes there can be, you know, what we call just little, oh shoot, what's the word? Oh, it'll come to me. But just little blips of like, okay, that seems like that's um, some kind of a fragment that's, you know, not quite right. Um, so that can be one of the challenging things, is making sure they're trying to get them to sit still, because at least with the type of machine I'm using, that's um, that's how it is for us. Now there might be more sophisticated and expensive, you know, pieces of equipment that maybe certain hospitals have, um, and they might be able to measure it a little bit more effectively, but but that can be one of the challenges too. So, but we do know that there is going to be brain activity that is going to be imbalanced with those brain waves for sure. And so yeah, it would be, I would love to see if there was any research about that, because I haven't found any, as far as like just testing kids on the spectrum and seeing what the common theme is, or the, you know, maybe patterns that you're noticing, because that would be fascinating.
Yeah, from what I know, the lack of inhibition because autism has a lot of lack of inhibition, especially the parvalveum. It's it doesn't allow theta to work properly, so it's a little bit higher. And a guy, I think Earl Miller from MIT, he just released a paper that was showing like we're constantly having this theta wave going across, like scanning the brain, trying, or it's kind of suppressing unwanted things, basically.
Hmm.
So with autism, that's not happening. And
Yeah.
then alpha with the thalamic or cortical communications, and that's a big problem with autism. The
Yeah.
thalamus,
Yeah.
speaking to the cortex, it's pretty bad stuff. Yeah, that inhibition thing is a central theme, I think, to autism, um, on various levels. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that I've heard parents report that I work with is they'll notice that some of the different therapies they use seem to improve when we address some of that underlying the underlying cellular stress too, which like the inhibition that you notice, or maybe some other things that are patterns that they have that are uh, more challenged, that when you calm down the inner chaos, how it's like the ability to actually engage in, say, some of those therapies actually enhances and improves too. So that's been something that I've found that's been really interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Those brainwaves are a part of the future, I think.
Yeah,
It's like imagine a sports team. You mentioned sports earlier. It's like it's all about space and time. If it's a basketball team, people have to be like in sync, and this is
for
what we're
sure.
talking about. We just have to be in sync, and that's not happening. So things are not communicating and operating. Um, yeah, the oxidative stress is a big thing too.
Yeah.
ROS. Do you have experience with that or no?
Yeah, I mean, indirectly, you bet. So, yeah, there's different ways to influence that. I would say some of the strategies that we use. There's some different products that we have that can help support that and try to help increase, good healthy oxygenation, better blood flow, circulation, but then also trying to remove some of those free radicals, and then helping the body just in a sense like clear out some of that stuff, and then bring it back in with follow it up with good nutrients and other things that can be neuroprotective and supportive too. So, but yeah.
The correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a little section on your website about nutrition.
Hmm.
Do you have experience with nutrition and autism?
Yeah, for sure. And both anecdotally from parents and patients, but also from some research. I know a lot of families have found gluten free and dairy free to really make a difference for their child. Um, and I think it's largely due to some of those proteins are just harder for their body to process. There's a lot of challenges with these kids with methylation and how well they can basically process certain B vitamins. And of course, if they're struggling there, then that means it creates a ripple effect into other aspects. And so, good nutrition can be make a really big difference. In fact, one family I was talking with a couple weeks ago, just from some of the changes they made with diet, huge improvements with some behavior and some of the habits that this child was displaying. Getting rid of like the some of the big no nos that we all should be avoiding would be the different food dyes. Red food dye, yellow, all those different ones can create some excitotoxicity and to the nerves and can cause some added stress. Um, Reducing the inflammatory components in our diet, such as I would definitely strongly recommend, and this is something anyone can apply, and actually it could be a benefit if you're not doing it already. But with the type of oils that we cook with, for example, canola oil and soybean oil, very highly processed. You could argue that it's maybe best used in a tractor because it's definitely not designed to be consumed for us. And it's a large part of it is just the way that it's manufactured and processed, and so it's very creates a lot of inflammation on the cellular level. So removing that and exchanging it with like butter or ghee or olive oil or coconut oil or avocado oil, those types of things, much better option when it comes to cooking is using something like that. And it's something anyone can do. It's just without feeling the overwhelm. Unless you bought a lifetime supply of canola oil, then I'm sorry, but you just exchange it. So you're going to still cook with oil or something like that. So instead of using this one that's more inflammatory, let's bring in this one. That's a healthier option and can still get the job done the way you want it to. So, so those are some things that we have seen and witnessed with some of the families. And then definitely, reducing some of the processed sugars. That would be a big one too. And I would say, gluten is interesting. I think that if it was gluten from like, say, 1980, that would probably be okay. But the
Yeah.
way that our farming has developed and that's become more industrialized, and of course, they use now what they call Roundup Ready crops using glyphosate, which can be very damaging to the intestines as well as the nervous system. Glyphosate's the main ingredient found in Roundup. And it can cause leaky gut, which means if you have leaky gut, then you also have a leaky blood-brain barrier. And so anything we can do to reduce any exposure to some of that. And unfortunately, a lot of the wheat and the gluten that this country consumes, sadly, has probably been sprayed with some of that stuff. So that's another piece that I think is why some kids are more sensitive as well. But again, there can be some different challenges genetically that can make them have a harder time with digestion and processing some of that.
Yeah, the suggestions on those oils are huge because of the lipid, I think. A lot
Yes.
of autistic kids have troubles with beta oxidation. Something like L-carnitine can have improvements.
Yes.
That's a simple fix.
Yeah, it
A lot
is.
of people don't know about lipids and beta oxidation, though. I mean, lipids are huge.
Yeah.
It's like the end goal is oxidative phosphorylation. That's where all these foods and things are going. And that's back to the oxidative stress and cellular dysfunction, I should say, cellular dysfunction.
Yeah.
And, that's just changing things, not really adding or, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's worth a shot.
For sure.
And I'm glad you mentioned like those. If you go back to 1980, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe because there's been a lot of changes, not necessarily good changes, and maybe for profit changes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
Yeah.
Um, I want to ask you about you talked about that 1 month old with the parasite, and then you talked about the bipolar patient, and you're talking about giving them something like a mineral or something. Can you speak more about how you go about making that, and is that something that your practice has?
So I don't make any of the stuff that I'm giving. I've got several different companies that I use. And so I purchase the products, and then I just find the ones that are going to be best for that individual, and then I give it to them. So I've got some great companies that I use that I really trust and that I've used for a long time, and I've seen those products work time and time again. So I have a lot of confidence with those, and so I just keep stuff on my shelf that I know is going to work, and then depending on the individual, then we are able to test to figure out, okay, which one of these options is going to be best. For example, with parasites, I probably have over, let's see, 10 to 13 different products in my office that can help kill parasites. But each product is really good, but it's all about discovering and understanding, okay, which one is the best. And so I would say there's a few that I definitely lean on more than others and find to be more effective. But then again, some people's chemistry might respond better to this product versus this other one from this other company. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it's, yeah, I was wondering if, like, you kind of facilitate that, or is it just like then they have to go get a prescription from, like, an MD and then, like,
Yeah.
other other stops and things, but it sounds like, yeah, you do all of that legwork, and your experiences allowed you to channel that and understand it, because that's another thing that's not well known, is what you were just talking about there, like, for an option.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. I mean, if you here's something interesting, Ryan. Let's use an example that I just have seen in my office just in the last couple weeks. Here in Utah, we have the mountains, and there can be what's called an inversion, where the smog and the nasty air quality can just settle, and it's really bad during the winter months. But once a storm comes in, then it pushes that air out. Well, so when somebody has sniffles, congestion, sinus issues, cough, sore throat, and immediately, what's the first thing that we think of? We think, oh, there's probably a bacteria or a virus that's going around and causing these symptoms, right? So then what's the common thing that gets prescribed? Well, let's go get some antibiotics. Now, that might be the right thing for some people. But what's interesting is I've witnessed as some of these people have come in, those things, those antibiotics don't touch some of that. And why? It's because the air they're breathing in right now, the nasty chemicals that are just, overloading our air quality, and it's definitely affecting the sinuses. It's affecting the lungs and all this other stuff. And so I've been able to determine for a large quantity of people that chemical toxicity is the underlying reason why you're having the sniffles, the sore throat, the congestion. And so if you have the right tool in place, then you're able to clear that stuff out. But it's all about understanding, okay, what is the thing that's creating that stress? And so we have some tools again, for chemicals and chemical toxicity. I've probably got like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, like, yeah, 9 or 10 different products that can help with that too. Um, so, hopefully that kind of gives you some insight, as far as different ways we look at things, and how it's important to have that open mind, right?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people, yeah, will just instantly go to those antibiotics or something over the counter, and it's just like, okay, so what harm
Yeah.
are they doing?
Yeah, like a it could be a decongestant, and that might help with the
Yeah,
symptoms, but you know, it a lot of times it works and it does help people feel better, but there's still likely an underlying piece there that's still present. So, and
yeah,
and and the accumulation over time, what's that going to look like, long term?
yeah, yeah, because they think, oh, it works, and then that's their go-to, and that's kind of what we're led to believe, like that's your option.
Yeah, but
So
but yeah, so definitely more options available than we sometimes consider, like you were saying.
yeah, and that's my biggest takeaway with talking to you today is like there's a lot more different options, and they seem to be pretty spot on and accurate with the root cause symptom, which I'm very much for. So, do you see clients or patients remotely?
Yeah, so the way I've structured my work lately, so I've created a program. It's called Health Empowered Families. So if you go to healthempoweredfamilies.com, you can put in your name and information there, and you can, then it leads you to a free training that I created that specifically talks about the cellular healing. And then if that's something that interests you and you feel like potentially could be helpful, then you could set up a consultation. So once we get into the consultation, that's where we talk and we determine, what are the biggest priorities for you and your child. And again, this is specifically designed for families with kids on the spectrum. And so I found that there was a lot of people that were reaching out and showing interest in coming to see me in my office here in Utah. But what I learned was, what, I've seen a pattern with a lot of these kids over time, that if I can implement these few things and do it in this sequence, that it can put us in a position of having great outcomes for these kids. And so I basically structured a 4-phase program. And as we go through this process, it's fascinating where we go through it, and I provide the resources for the families. Once they choose to engage with me, I mail those to them, and then I coach them through it. And with the different patients, we might tweak things a little bit here or there, but I've got a pretty sound system that I've discovered. And then, of course, we fine tune and tweak and adapt as needed with each individual, because everyone's going to be a little different too. Um, but it's been a fascinating thing, and so I've got clients from all over the country that I'm working with right now virtually. And the best way to engage with me would be through that healthempoweredfamilies.com website, where you can actually, learn more about the cellular healing and understand if this is a path that makes sense. And if anything, just explore in the consultation what we do. We have a pretty reasonable fee for the consultation. It's only, if I want to remember right, I think we just changed it, but it's like $37 basically just to do the consultation. And so that's an opportunity to gauge, and then it's not the right fit for everyone, and that's okay. And so that's where you can explore those options in the consultation with me, and to determine if it would make sense to do something. And so that's how I'm working with a lot of families throughout the country at this time, because I realize this is something that families with children on the spectrum, I would say there's a more than enough availability to find good therapies where people live. But when it comes to the cellular healing part, what I've learned is it's a piece that's missing, and it's an aspect that isn't getting addressed as thoroughly as we would like. Now, you've probably heard of leucovorin and things like that, and that's a medication that it can be really powerful and helpful, but it is something that I would say is providing a need where there may be a deficiency in, the folinic acid, one of the B vitamins, and that can really make a difference. However, at the same time, it seems to be incomplete. And so, as I go through this 4 phases with families, we're able to really hone in on getting into some of more of those root cause things that can be creating that cellular inflammation. You can still continue to take, some of those things that you're taking, like leucovorin or other things that people naturally take, but we kind of fill in the gaps where a lot of times it seems like families, when I talk to them, they might have maybe tried one of the phases that I recommend, but not all 4 phases, and where it's just how they all work together nicely. So that would probably be the easiest and best way to engage. And where I do, yes, work in fact with people all over. So, like just yesterday, I was talking to a parent from the Kansas City area, and then earlier this week, it was a mom from California, and then so just all over. So
Okay, great news. Yeah, I'll put those in the show notes too. Um, I have a couple more questions, but they're not really practice related,
sure,
unless we haven't covered in some. If you want to mention something practice related before we kind of switch gears,
yeah.
something we haven't covered.
No, I feel like we've been able to touch on a lot of good things, and I think you've asked good questions, and it's led me to share some good information. So yeah, I'm satisfied with what we're doing.
Okay, so I'm going to at least ask one.
Yeah.
What is something? What is something you're most excited about recently?
Um, let's see. Is that more on a professional note?
It could be either. It could
Okay.
be personal.
Um, yeah, I think, let's see, it's, it's the little wins. The little wins go a long way with families with kids on the spectrum. For example, something that one of these parents responded to me recently was that after starting the program with us, how her daughter slept through the night, for the first time in a long time, and woke up really happy the next day. I mean, little things like that. That really gets me excited and makes me happy. Um, I always love, being able to witness um, just how individuals that we serve and that we work with, where they can see and feel and notice an impact, knowing that we're helping them, find some hope and relief. And it doesn't come quick. I don't believe in quick fixes for especially when it comes to kids on the spectrum. But patience and persistence will pay off. So, anyways, that's one thing I'm excited about. The other thing I'm excited about, on a personal note, is I love supporting my kids with their sports, and my daughter's playing on the high school basketball team, and that's been a fun experience for me. So, and my other daughter is competitive in volleyball, and I've got another daughter that's competitive in pickleball, and another daughter that's likes dance. So it's fun to be a part of my family's life. So
Life happens here. That's where
yes,
life happens. I'm glad you mentioned that the example with the sleeping through the night, because every autistic person has a problem with
yeah,
circadian rhythm.
yeah,
It's underrated.
it is.
Yeah, those small wins are huge for the family with autism.
Yeah, it
You know,
is. It is big.
well, Dr. and I think maybe we'll just wrap it up
Yeah,
there.
I think that's great.
I'm so blessed that we had this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate your time and this opportunity, and keep up the good work. You're doing some great things.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Thank you
A
so much.
very fascinating episode.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and just to think, I can sense just the good man that you are. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, same to you.
Appreciate it. Awesome, Ryan. Well, God bless you, and yeah, maybe we'll cross paths again in the future. Hopefully.
Yeah, we can stay in touch for sure.
Okay, sounds good, man.
So
Okay,
yeah.
enjoy the rest of your day.